I've been getting a lot of questions about how to prevent under eye creasing. I'm going to let you know exactly what I do and what I've learned along the way. I do have to start off saying this is not one size fits all, and it depends on the canvas that you're working on initially. One important step, like imperative, especially for mature skin baddies, is your skincare game. And many times before I put on color corrector and or my concealer, I will use a balm. The Tatcha serum stick is very lovely. Okay, let's talk about concealers. Let's just get this out of the way though. It doesn't matter what age you are, as long as you have lines under your eyes, you're always going to deal with some type of creasing. Doesn't matter if you're 20 or 90 years old. There's different type of concealers, obviously, and unfortunately, sometimes you have to go through a couple to know what works well for you. And in my opinion, many times it doesn't matter the concealer. What matters is the application and technique and the canvas that you're putting it on. There's silicone-based concealers and there's more skin-forward, serum-based concealers. I happen to love Natasha High Glam and the Estee Lauder. These are actually hybrid. There's some skincare in here, but they're silicone based. Silicone based are all about smoothing and holding their shape. They're great for that polished, blurred look, but these are not going to move with facial expressions. They're meant to sit over top of your under eye, and I love that type of look. Now, these are concealers with more emollients, more oil based, more skincare. Lancome has a lot of hydration in here. It's more serum. It's going to go on a little more light. Kosas has peptides, hyaluronic acid. But out of these three, the Maxine's Revenge French Face has the most hydration. 69% skincare is in this little tube. This means it's going to stretch over your skin. It's going to move with your facial expression, but you still can get creasing with this as well. I'm going to say this again because I cannot stress this enough. Make sure your under eyes are well hydrated. Skincare that works best for your skin type. I like bright under eye, but I do start off with more of a flesh tone concealer. If you have watched any of my makeup tutorials, you know I like to apply my concealer right on my skin, but today I'm going to show you a little different application. Thin layers are key when it comes to creasing. I'm going to apply a little bit on the back of my hand. I'm going to take my concealer brush, work that concealer in the brush. I'm going to start down in this area here, and I avoid this area here. I call this crease street at all costs. Gently tapping. I am going to extend it up in this area here. You're going to let this dry down before you put setting powder on. But if you have any creasing in this area here, you're going to take a Q-tip and you're just going to buff that out. Sometimes I use a serum, just buff it out. Also, when you're using a Q-tip, you can actually go in a little upward motion like this, and that buffs it out a little more too. You can also use like a fanned out brush. This is the new e.l.f. eyeliner brush, but it does buff out some of that creasing. Whatever works for you, that's not going to disturb your concealer. Sometimes I even use a smudging tip from an eyeliner. Just like this, soft, gentle strokes. There is going to be some type of creasing at any age. We're focusing on how to not accentuate it even more. While that's drying down, I'm just going to reactivate my blush because I covered it up a little bit. I have seen people spray setting spray on their concealer brush. I do personally like to use a setting spray in between cream steps. I like to use one size. Let's talk about setting powder while all this is drying down. So a pressed powder is basically just a loose powder in a compact form. However, when you're using a pressed powder, even though it is loose powder in a compact, it's more controllable. You can control how much is going on your under eye more so than a powder, in my opinion. It's smooth and flat, and you can get a nice even coat on your brush or your powder puff. Baked powder. This is Kosas Cloud Set. Starts off as a liquid or a mousse. They add a lot of hydrating ingredients in there, and they bake it to a very finely milled powder, which a lot of powders are, but baked is just different. It's not going to absorb all of your hydration that a lot of us are holding on to for dear life. I highly recommend for really mature under eyes. You can apply this with a brush or a powder puff, whatever works for you. I happen to like to pregame with a brush and then go back in with a powder puff. Love Givenchy. I love Huda It pressed powder too, but Givenchy is my favorite pressed powder. I'm gonna take my pressed powder, a brush, and I'm just gonna make sure I'm coating this brush, making sure all the powder is in there. Take off all the excess in my hand. Now I'm just pre-gaming with this. Just gonna start down here, work my way up. I'm just slightly setting my concealer in. You do not have to do the powder puff. You can always add a little more on this brush. I do like the brush, but the powder puff, in my opinion, is going to give you the most even, thin layer of setting powder. Taking a powder puff, wipe off the excess on the back of your hand, and I start down here. And I just work my way all the way to the corner of my eye. Can you see that difference? See how blurred and smooth this is? I like this vehicle. This is going to give me, personally, a nice, smooth, even layer of setting powder. So you can see some of my creasing because I have lines under there, but they're not overly accentuated. Now, a lot of people say that they don't want to use a setting powder. There are some self-setting concealers that you can use. There's one, I'm sure there's plenty, but I only know of one, Prime Prometics. This is the Perfecting Concealer Stick. This is self-setting and it stays where you put it. I do use this once in a while too. If you put too much setting powder on your face, there are wonderful hydration sprays to melt the powders. I happen to love Dialba First Serum Spray. Spray it all over, let it dry down, and it will melt your powders. Don't worry, if you fuck around, you don't need to find out. There's hydrating sprays that will actually help save. If you still have some creasing, you can always take some bronzer or some shadow, and you can actually just apply it right in this area here and camouflage some of your creasing. I'm gonna give you like a little shadow effect. Less is more at this point, especially if you're new to concealer and powders. I hope that helped. Have a good day.